Greetings, my lords! My name is Stuart, son of Michael, and welcome to this week's review of
Gandalf the Grey and Gandalf the White.
Last week we took a look at Legolas and Gimli, and before that, Aragorn. This week we're actually looking at the character that a lot of people don't know isn't actually human. If you're only familiar with the Lord of the Rings movies, you might be surprised to know that Gandalf was not born a man. In fact, he's not even born per se, and not even originally from Middle-earth.
What?
Gandalf is a member of the Istar. I think I said that right. Which is a small council of 5 wizards that were originally Maiar, which is sort of like Lord of the Rings angels. We meet 3 of them in the live-action movies: Gandalf, Saruman, and in the Hobbit films, Radagast the Brown! Also, I know I've criticized a lot of the Hobbit films for being Peter Jackson fanfiction, but I am perfectly okay with seeing our boy Radagast the Great. Gandalf in his early pre-life was a Maiar named Olorin, and I'm probably saying that wrong, and he was assigned to advise the mortal races on how to best oppose Sauron. He and his brethren arrived in the appearance of old men, and Olorin arrived around year 1000 of the Third Age. Upon his arrival, he was granted Narya, one of the 3 elven rings of power, which granted him mastery over fire. Over the next few centuries, Olorin wandered Middle-earth, casually learning and advising people such as the Dunedain, the Elves, the Dwarves, and on occasion, the Hobbits. He was also given many names like Mithrandir, the Grey Pilgrim, and his personal favorite, Gandalf. Also, the people of Rohan called him Stormcrow, which, ooh, that's a cool name. Gandalf's 2,000-year pilgrimage has had him mostly just helping the common people. He would occasionally have run-in with Sauron, and he would occasionally continue his mission as he saw fit, chasing down leads, enjoying the company of others, and advising people on all different things. His reputation spread throughout all of Middle-earth, and he's generally seen as a pretty swell fellow. As such, I personally think Gandalf's starting alignment should be neutral good. Even as one of the Maiar who should be most concerned with stopping Sauron, he sometimes just goes off on his own to visit friends, entertain children, and just be kind of goofy. Also, I like to mention that, just like in the previous videos, I will be ignoring and not counting significant portions of the Hobbit films. I am just really not a fan of those films, and while the events of the Dungeons of Dol Guldur are technically canon, these events take place around 50 years before that book even takes place, and I don't want to watch the Hobbit films, guys. I'm sorry. I know it's somewhat hypocritical of me to take canon events from the original trilogy and not the new ones, and I'm realizing I'm picking and choosing as I see fit, but I just am incapable of sitting through the Battle of 5 Armies. I literally fall asleep every time. Sorry. Again, we will only be covering the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and we will not be covering the events from The Hobbit or any of the other supplementing materials. But with that out of the way, let's go. However, before we get to the ding-dings, I want to give a huge thank you to all of the over 500 people who went and followed our Kickstarter. As a special thank you, I have set up a special VIP system for those people who want the best deal. If you head on over to getwaifu.loadingcrewcrafts.com by clicking the link in the description and in the pinned comment, this will take you to our special VIP page. By submitting just a $1 payment, you are guaranteeing yourself the best spot, giving you a 10% discount on the softcover book. That may not seem like much, but if we reach $20,000 in funding, this softcover will be upgraded to a hardcover absolutely free. This is eventually saving you like $30. I'll let you know that as of this recording, I already have 150 VIPs already signed up. Well, this is embarrassing. Thanks to your overwhelming enthusiasm, the 300 VIPs I originally wanted got absolutely blown out of the water. As of this new recording, which is Wednesday, by the way, just a couple days ago, we have over 320 VIPs signed up. That means within one video, with one call to action, over 150 of you mad lads signed up. Which means I need to expand to 500 VIPs, meaning those 500 people get 10% off the softcover book, and if we reach $20,000 in funding, which is extremely likely at this rate, that gets upgraded to a hardcover absolutely free. Thank you again for all of your support. I cannot thank you enough. It's kind of been a dream of mine to create an RPG book, and the fact that this glorified Valentine's Day shitpost is turning into something huge, I'm absolutely blown away. Thank you so much for your support, and now, on to the video.
Shall not pass!
Tea? Or maybe something a little stronger. I've got a few bottles of the old Wynyard left.
Gandalf returns to the Shire to celebrate the 111th birthday of his old friend Bilbo Baggins, bringing with him fireworks for the party. He catches 2 troublemakers and puts them to work, tasking them with dish duty and keeping them from causing more trouble with his explosives. I'm gonna go with a neutral good for this. Gandalf appears in Bilbo's home and lectures him about the use of the ring's powers. They briefly discuss Bilbo's leave, and Gandalf agrees to watch over Frodo. Seeing his friend given to the temptations of the ring, however, Gandalf startles him back to his senses and convinces Bilbo to leave the ring behind, for not only his own good, but possibly everybody's safety. Also neutral good. Gandalf sees a terrible vision upon touching the ring. He spends time considering what to do as he waits for Frodo to return. When Frodo gets back from the party, searching for Bilbo, Gandalf lets him know that Bilbo has gone to live with the elves and has left everything to him. Gandalf warns Frodo to keep the ring secret while he leaves to learn more about it. Lawful good.
The year 3434 of the Second Age. Here follows the account of Isildur.
Gandalf researches all he can about the ring. He learns that fire lights a unique marking around the band. Gandalf returns to the Shire and asks Frodo for the ring, throwing it into the fireplace to find out, and confirming that the markings are a match. He warns Frodo about the dangers of the ring and its connection to Sauron, who could already be on his way there to retrieve it. They leave immediately for Bree to prevent the ring from getting into the Nazgul's hands. Also lawful good.
Confounded old Samwise Gamgee!
Catching Samwise spying on them and realizing that they can't really leave him there, Gandalf assigns Sam to be his companion on the journey to Rivendell. He sends him to Bree while he goes to Saruman for advice. Lawful good.
He cannot yet take physical form, but his spirit has lost none of its potency.
Gandalf goes ahead of the group and rides to Isengard. He meets with Saruman to discuss the ring. Gandalf finds out too late, however, that Saruman has aligned himself with Sauron. Defying the request to join up with them, Saruman attacks Gandalf and the wizard battle begins. This goes poorly for Gandalf. Lawful good. Gandalf escapes Saruman with the help of the Eagles and meets up with everyone at Rivendell. Learning that Frodo's been stabbed by the Nazgul, no more could be asked of him. But Elrond says that they can't keep the ring in Rivendell because the elves aren't strong enough to fight off Mordor and Isengard's forces. Gandalf reconsiders his choice and joins the Council of Elrond as everyone decides what to do with the ring. Understanding that it must be destroyed, Gandalf emphasizes this by speaking the Black Tongue during the council, which helps people realize how dangerous everything is. Throughout all the bickering, Gandalf unfortunately has to accept that sending a hobbit with the ring into the fires of Mount Doom is literally the best option they have. Lawful good.
You shall be the Fellowship of the Ring.
Right. Where are we going?
Joining the Fellowship of the Ring, the party fail to pass Caradhras. I think I'm saying that right. Gandalf leads them through Moria under the urgency of Frodo, where Pippin causes a loud noise on accident, leading goblins and orcs and a troll to attack them. Gandalf fights for his own survival and for the survival of everyone in the party. What annoys me about the Peter Jackson movies is that they imply that Gandalf is fully aware of the the Balrog, but does nothing to inform the Fellowship of the danger. I have to give a lawful neutral of this, and I know this is a movie-only decision, but it's just really baffling that he didn't mention anything. The Balrog comes to play, and with such a dangerous beast chasing after them, Gandalf stays behind to hold it off, getting dragged into the abyss along with it. Also, nat 20 scene, lawful good.
Until at last I threw down my enemy and smote his ruin upon the mountainside.
After defeating the Balrog, Gandalf actually dies, but he is eventually sent back to Earth by God and scares the shit out of Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli. He also lets them know that Merry and Pippin are safe because he saw to them earlier in the woods, and devises a new plan to help Frodo from a distance. Still lawful good.
Courtesy of your hall is somewhat lessened of late, Theoden King.
Gandalf, Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas arrive at Rohan. With some wizard magic, Gandalf breaks a spell that holds the king's mind captive. Still lawful good.
Fingers would remember their own strength better if they grasped your sword.
After freeing the king's mind, Gandalf urges Theoden to fight Saruman. However, the king is grieving and still a little woozy, and instead tells his people to flee to Helm's Deep. Realizing that the fortress will be overrun, Gandalf brings the exiled Éomer, and his riders to Helm's Deep and defeat Saruman's army. Lawful good.
We shall have peace when you answer for the burning of the Westfold.
After the events of Isengard, Gandalf loots the Palantir and tells Pippin not to look at it, which is then almost immediately disregarded. When Pippin picks it up to look at it, Sauron looks back. Within that time, information is exchanged. Fortunately, Pippin saw into the orb that Minas Tirith was the next place Sauron would send his armies, so Gandalf brings Pippin there with him, not only to protect and warn Minas Tirith, but also to protect Pippin, who Sauron believes has the ring. Lawful good.
I come with tidings in this dark hour, and with counsel.
When the pair arrive in Gondor, they approach Denethor II, who is too insane, grief-stricken, and unfortunately, power-hungry to properly work with them. In response, Gandalf makes Pippin climb the tower, lighting the beacon of Gondor, and signaling Rohan for aid despite the steward's wishes. Chaotic good.
Abandon your post! Please flee for your life!
Despite war being at his door, Gandalf knocks out Denethor and takes charge when the steward gives up and commands his army to abandon their post. Gandalf dismisses the order and takes command. Chaotic good.
Gondor is lost. There is no hope for men.
In the heat of battle, Pippin runs to Gandalf to tell him Denethor plans to burn Faramir. Gandalf gets there just in the nick of time, but Denethor is kicked into the pyre by Shadowfax. And though they succeed in saving Faramir, Denethor catches fire and leaps to his doom. Neutral good.
Suffered a defeat, yes, but behind the walls of Mordor, our enemy is regrouping.
After the siege of Gondor, Gandalf realizes that the only option Frodo and Sam have is to head into Mordor and be a distraction, so that way Frodo has the opportunity to drop the ring into the volcano. When they arrive, Gandalf tries to be diplomatic and converses with the Mouse of Sauron, strictly to buy time. Aragorn decapitates the head of the creature and begins the final battle. Thankfully, their tactic worked, and this empties Mordor of orcs, allowing the hobbits time to destroy the ring. After its destruction, Gandalf flew in with some eagles to Mount Doom after picking up Frodo and Sam. And I am not certain if I mentioned this in another video, but it's really sad when you realize that Gandalf brought 3 eagles. One for Frodo, one for Sam, and one for Smeagol.
Now come the days of the king.
Gandalf crowns Aragorn the High King of both Gondor and Arnor and honors his hobbit friends. Shortly after the coronation, Gandalf travels with the hobbits to the Shire and spends 2 years talking to Tom Bombadil, a character we don't actually see in the movies. There is no sacking of the Shire in the film version, so we're going to skip over that. However, afterwards, Gandalf and Frodo sail into the west with Elrond, Galadriel, and Frodo to the Undying Lands, where they await their eternal reward. Neutral good. I believe that by the end of the War of the Ring, Gandalf was literally the most powerful being on Middle-earth. And what I love about his character is how, despite all of his power and prestige, Gandalf was most concerned with the small folk. Gandalf fought hardest to protect others and refused to seek more power for himself. This is obvious when you consider Saruman acted as his foil, but also still relevant on how some people can lose touch with reality once you see any amount of success. The most obvious examples that I keep preaching in these videos, are politicians and famous celebrities that try to preach shit despite the fact that they're immune to half the world's problems. I don't know about you guys, but I find it extremely annoying when I'm working hard every day and I see some dipshit politicians sleep their way through a Senate meeting. And I mean literally sleep through. I don't mean like fucking. I mean these politicians are asleep on the Senate fucking floor. They will then vote on policies that screw over the little guy and then preach that you are somehow the problem.
Teachers hate teaching. They're lazy. Sluggish cat ladies, KKK with summers off.
Oh, and celebrities are even worse. Hell, I'll even admit sometimes that I have to stop myself from getting on my own high horse, which admittedly I have been doing this video. People have been calling me out on it, and they are right to do so, but goddamn, it's so frustrating when you struggle for your next month's rent and some rich piece of shit keeps trying to force his political opinions on you. I get it. I get it, I do. Gandalf is a character that makes sure that he knows exactly what is happening with the small folk and regularly hangs around with them despite the fact that he's regularly in the Court of High Kings. And again, Tolkien's work was never meant to be an allegory for anything and is simply a basic set of instructions on how to behave honorably and how to treat others. Gandalf, despite being practically a demigod, suffers the same fate as us, and no amount of money or power will help him escape that. Granted, he does get to go to the Undying Lands of what is basically heaven, but that is after a life, and might I remind you, a very long life full of sacrifices and service. And that's a lesson that I sorely think those in power need to learn right now. Just saying. Thank you to the patrons, and I'll see you all next time.